Hi there. In this video, we're going to start exploring the person of Jesus and how Jesus' values and moral teachings can be a guidance for us in our lives. So here we go. Before we talk specifically about Jesus, I want to talk first about the idea of a prophet. Now, in your Bible class, you've talked about who the biblical prophets were, so those people who lived at that certain period of time, kind of in a particular place, either Israel or Judah, and they were people who talked to the people of Israel or Judah about God's message. So, prophet in general is anybody who's compelled to speak God's message to others. So they're really telling people and calling people to awareness about what does and does not correspond to the Spirit of God. So what people are doing that is kind of supporting what God has in mind for us, and people who are doing things that work against what God might have in mind for us. And so a prophet's purpose is really to affect change, to get people to change what they're doing so that what they're doing is more in line with who God has called them to be and what God is calling them to do. So if prophets are these people who are trying to affect change, prophets are these people who are trying to call us to be our best selves, call us to be who God has created us to be, sometimes that call can be seen as what we would say is countercultural, going against the current culture. You have lots of messages being thrown at you about how you should look, how you should act, how you should think, and not all of those messages that you see on TV or read on the internet or hear on the radio, not all of those messages are trying to get you to be the person that God created you to be. So those messages about being your very best self, being who God created you to be, sometimes those messages are countercultural, going against the current culture. So prophets are also revolutionary. Revolution means change. Prophets are calling for change. And prophets also highlight consequences of inaction. So prophets are talking about what will happen if people don't act. And so if we think about those three elements, a prophet going against the current culture, a prophet being revolutionary, pushing for change, and a prophet warning about what might happen if people don't change, being a prophet is not always a popular enterprise. Prophets are not always popular people. And if we remember the idea about cheap grace and costly grace, costly grace was that idea of responding to challenges in life and trusting that God will be there to support you along the way. That's what prophets are doing. They're responding to this challenge of kind of a current culture and are calling people to respond to what God is wanting them to do. And so if we think about those three characteristics of a prophet, being countercultural, being revolutionary, and warning about consequences of inaction, Jesus kind of fits that profile. Jesus went against what his culture was telling people to do. His culture said, stay away from sinners, don't talk to them. Jesus went against that. His culture said, you don't work on the Sabbath. And Jesus said, well, there are some things that are more important than that. Jesus said, or the culture said, that certain groups of people don't matter. Lepers, women, tax collectors. And Jesus said, no, those people do matter and are worth paying attention to. Jesus certainly was revolutionary. He called for a change in the social order, preached about this reality where a kingdom of God exists. And we're going to talk about that later in class. And Jesus taught that caring for other people took precedence over following the law. So people in Jesus' day were very focused on following the law. And as we've said before in class, Jesus didn't call for getting rid of the law, but he did call for thinking about why that law existed. So people in Jesus' day practiced legalism that was very strict adherence to the law. And what Jesus was really calling people to do was to follow the law in a way that showed that we love God and love other people. So that was the most important thing for Jesus. He didn't emphasize getting rid of the law, but Jesus wanted people to remember that all of that law, that whole exercise was really all about loving God and loving other people. That's the true purpose, the true spirit of the law. And so that should be our main focus. And so because of Jesus' actions, because of Jesus' views and Jesus' actions, he wasn't always popular with Roman leaders who would take offense at him preaching about a new kingdom, since they were in charge of the current kingdom, and wasn't always popular with Jewish religious leaders who, disagreed with his interpretation of following the law. So we've said that prophets are countercultural, revolutionary, and highlight consequences of an action. And prophetic actions are the ways that prophets show that they are countercultural and revolutionary. So these public gestures that prophets do to illustrate their message. So when Jesus was doing things like healing the sick, touching lepers, having conversations with women, accepting people who were foreign, eating with sinners, challenging hypocrisy, those are the ways that Jesus showed that he was countercultural and revolutionary. Now, the term Christian means follower of Christ, a follower of Jesus. And so as Christians, we are called not only to say that we follow Jesus, but we are called to act as Jesus did. So we are called to do the same kinds of prophetic actions that Jesus did. We are called to challenge those things in society that are sources of injustice. We might not have lepers walking around in our midst, but we are called to reach out to people who might be excluded in other ways. We are called to speak out for people who are being oppressed. We are called to love. We are called to service. So if you remember from Bible class, once Jesus is grown up, before he begins his ministry, he goes out to the desert and is tempted by the devil. So he's tempted to turn stones into bread. He's tempted to gain control over all the kingdoms of the world. And he's tempted to throw himself off the temple and let the angels pick him up and carry him. And Jesus rejects all of those different temptations. And one of the great things about that story is Jesus is called and has this experience and then moves into his ministry. So Jesus bases his decisions on his values. So Jesus does the things that he does because of what he values, because of his fundamental moral principles. So Jesus believed all people should be treated with love. So that's how he acted. Jesus believed that stuff was not the most important thing to him. So that's the way he lived. That's why he turns down turning the stones into bread. Jesus believed that political power was not the most powerful way to be interacting with people. That's why he turns down having all the kingdoms of the world. Jesus believed that love was the most important way to act towards people. So that affected the way that he acted. So a value is a standard, a belief, or an idea by which one behavioral alternative is chosen over another. If we value, for example, integrity, we choose to study for a test rather than to cheat on the test. If we value friendship, we choose to spend time with our friends. If we value our family, we choose to spend time with our family. So sometimes we have to prioritize our values. So maybe my valuing my sleep gets in the way of my valuing my work. So I have to pick between the two. Now, our values are also abstract. A valuable is a concrete thing. A value is what might be behind the love of that thing. So, for example, if you think of pictures that you might have, like your pictures are things, but they're important to you because they represent your family, your friends, your memories. My wedding ring is valuable. It's worth money. I could sell it and get money for it, but it is really valuable to me because it represents love. And our values are also personal. They're shaped by the world around us, but they are personal to us. Our decisions are based on our values. And our values have some permanency. We don't really change our values like we change our socks. Hopefully that's every day. And our values may change as we grow. So like the things that we value as an adult may be different than what we valued as a young child, but it's more of a subtle shift. And the shaping of our values is a lifelong process. If you're a person of integrity, you'll have a good sense of what these values are, but you're continually re-examining them and reshaping them. And so it's really important for us to know what we value, to be able to identify and accept that, so that we can help kind of ourselves and help other people make decisions that are in line with helping us be who God has created us to be. And so, like I said earlier, we can see lots of different messages in our society. We could see, different messages about how we're supposed to look and how we're supposed to act. And this kind of set of Christian values, or these values emphasized by Jesus, this is what Jesus was all about. Jesus was all about love. Jesus was all about service, recognizing the dignity of others, and the Beatitudes. And the Beatitudes are a set of statements that are described in the Gospels of Matthew and Luke. They're part of Matthew's big Sermon on the Mount that we'll spend some time looking at in class. And sometimes they're called the commandments of the New Testament, but that's not quite right, because the Ten Commandments were a list of rules. Do this or don't do this. And the Beatitudes really aren't a set of rules, but they're more a set of attitudes. They describe a way of life. So really these suggestions that if you're a follower of Jesus, this is the way that you need to live. And we're going to talk about these a lot more in class, but here they are to start. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the land. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the clean of heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. And blessed are they who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And we'll spend some more time in class talking about Jesus, talking about what he did, what he valued, and how we can relate those teachings to our own life. I look forward to seeing you then.